Welcome into an all-new week of Daily Faceoff Live, streaming live on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. The show is a presentation of Bet365. You can download the app today and use the promo code NATION, N-A-T-I-O-N, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Tyler Yaremchuk, and I'm not joined by Frank Saravalli today. We got Colby Cohn putting in a little overtime, a double dip of Colby after, of course, his show Morning Cup of Hockey this morning. He's popping on with me. What's going on, Cole?
I'm certainly not as pretty as the other guy, but I'll do my best to bring some good information to the show today, Tyler. But as we discussed before today's show started, this is your show anyway. This is the Tyler Yaremchuk edition of Daily Faceoff Live.
Sure. If we want to pump up my ego like that, I guess we can. We're doing a new thing on the show. It is the Dominion Lending Center's poll question. It's going to be up every single day in our YouTube chat. A chance for you guys who are in there in the YouTube 5 days a week, every day to have a say in what we're talking about on the show. So the poll question today, Pat's going to put it in. It's, would you have the Toronto Maple Leafs in your top 5 of Stanley Cup contenders? So have your vote. We'll break down the results a little bit later in the show, and we're going to be talking some Leafs in a little bit as well. Also going to be talking to Jason Gregor about the Edmonton Oilers in our big segment, Colby. But I want to start this show by looking back at the big news we got over the weekend. The David Jiricek drama has finally come to a close. The Minnesota Wild made the offer. The Columbus Blue Jackets finally have moved on from the 6th overall pick from a couple of years ago. Pat, I think we can flash up the return here. What did you make of this? I mean, we had kind of heard over the last 7 to 10 days that the asking price had maybe gone from a really high-end young forward to a package of draft picks and a depth defenseman. That is, I guess, essentially what Columbus ended up getting.
Look, I want to start this by saying beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And what I mean by that, Tyler, is, Jarmo Kekalainen felt one way, Don Waddell feels a different way. When you have a new general manager, they don't have the attachment level. Their job does not depend on the development and the way a player performs that was drafted by the old regime. There's just not that level of attachment. So, I think this is a home run for the Minnesota Wild, because I think the juice is totally worth the squeeze. I think the risk the reward completely outweighs the risk. You're talking about a first-round pick that's likely going to be in the bottom 10 or 12 if things continue to move along for the Minnesota Wild, who sit, atop the standings right now. And so I like it. And I heard some reports out there that there was potentially 2 first-round picks offered. I'm not sure that I buy that report. I forget who said it exactly. It didn't come from our guy, Frank. It didn't come from from our DFO squad. But look, I think all around, like, Columbus gets a bunch of draft picks that they can weaponize if they need to. They can make the picks if they need to. And the Wild solidify their blue line for years to come. When you think about Faber and you think about Jiricek, and then you think about the fact that Zeev Buium at Denver is not far down the path. That kid's going to be a star. Okay. You've got Brodin, who's got some time left on his contract, right? Like, all of a sudden you're starting to see how this is going to look for a couple of years, Tyler. And don't forget, you've got Brock Faber signed long-term to a very reasonable contract. You're going to have Jiricek under team control for the next load of years at pretty good numbers. You're not going to break the bank on him. Zeev Buium hasn't even started the entry-level part of his contract. So you have a lot of cost certainty on your back end. And anybody who listens to the Daily Faceoff, to my show in the morning, to your show, whatever, I'm a big believer in building through the back end. I think that's what Bill Guerin is doing.
Yeah, I think this is an awesome fit in Minnesota. Even when you just think for the next decade, if you can have Faber and Jiricek as your top 4 on the right side, you're in a really, really good spot. And that, again, protects you from a guy like Jared Spurgeon, who's been so good for them for so long, but he's going to age out eventually. He's 35 years old. He's got 2 more years left on that deal. The injuries have started to stack up for Spurgeon as well. Jonas Brodin's now on the other side of 30. Like, I like this move to kind of go, okay, maybe right this moment, you don't look at Minnesota's blue line and be like, whoa, they really needed like an impact defender like Jiricek, or a guy who could grow into that, I should say. But for them to go out and just have the foresight of like, okay, let's do this now and just continue to extend our window down the line, I think is very, very smart. That blue line, like you said, Zeev Buium, another guy, Carson Lambos, is playing in Iowa right now. He's a former first-round pick. Like, all of a sudden, they have a lot of assets. And here's the other thing, Colby. even if you get to a point, let's say in 2 years, where Jiricek has exploded and Faber's still good, and then maybe it's Lambos and Bouillon, man, you can always get a lot for an established, good top 4 defenseman. So if you then have one of these assets and maybe you need scoring or you need this, you need that, it is very, very easy to find value for defensemen.
Yeah, I think this one's going to work out in Billy Guerin's favor. I think Billy Guerin continues to buy himself time and manage his team with $14 million in dead cap money that comes off after this year. We know a lot of that's going to go to Kirill Kaprizov, but he already makes 9. They've already got 9 on the books for him. So what are we talking? Another 4 or 5 million a year. The increase is coming. Bill Guerin, there's a reason he got picked to lead Team USA the next couple of years. He's doing a really I'm trying to use the correct word here. He's a surgical job, in my opinion, of being good now, maybe not being a contender, but also planning for the future.
Every move seems very methodical and intentional and like thought out. There's nothing that just seems like a very quick, like, let's jump on that and do it, or like living in the moment type thing. There's a plan there in Minnesota, and it's why they seem to be a team who's trending in the right direction. It was not the only trade we saw over the weekend, as there was a little swap between the Nashville Predators and Colorado Avalanche. Neither team off to the starts to the year that they wanted, but they swapped backup goaltenders with Justus Annunen and Scott Wedgewood, trading postal codes in this deal. And what I wanted to do was kind of zero in a little bit on Colorado here, because not to say that the ship has sailed in Nashville, but with 7 wins in your first 25 games, I don't think you're going out and making trades trying to salvage your season right now. If you're Colorado, you're absolutely trying to do that with how poor your goaltending's been this season. The fact you're 13-12 so far on the year. My thing is, like, again, this is a fine swap to go get a guy who's a little bit more veteran than Annunen, who has a track record at least of going on some nice runs, but this can't be the only thing Colorado's doing. I got a firsthand look at them on Saturday night. They are not the Colorado Avalanche of old. They are not the team that consistently strikes fear into you, and a big part of that is because I think if you're playing the Avalanche, you kind of sit there and go, it's a pretty good chance we're getting 3 or 4 tonight. We don't have to play perfect hockey to beat them, and that wasn't always the case when you were facing Colorado.
Well, Tyler, look, you also have to remember, and we did our power rankings on Morning Cuppa last Monday, and I snuck Colorado into the 5th spot on my power rankings because they were on an 8-1-1 tear in 10 games. And now, since, I believe they've lost 3 in a row, and they're like on a 3-6 skid right now. So at one point, to me, they looked like they were trending up. Valeri Nichushkin is a difference maker for them. They are a different team when he comes into the lineup, and they're still certainly missing some important pieces of guys who got off to good starts this year. They've dealt with some injuries, but for me, like, you look at the way that they are mismanaging the puck, and when you have goaltending problems, and you and I have talked about this for years with Edmonton, when you don't have a star goaltender, you cannot mismanage the puck. It just never works out in your favor. So sure, you go out and you get Scott Wedgewood, who I do think is a very capable backup type of goaltender. Like, I think he can come in and give you some good starts. He did it in Dallas for a couple of seasons. Anytime Ottinger would get hurt, Wedgewood would come in and sort of steady the ship. I know his numbers aren't pretty, but I do think there's probably more confidence in the locker room in Colorado in Scott Wedgewood than there was in Annunen, who was just kind of young and unproven. I mean, a lot younger than Wedgewood. So I do think Colorado will be active. I don't think with the cast of characters they have, every year has to be win now. So I think they're a team that, we will certainly be keeping our eye on to see what else they do down the middle. Like, are you going to win with Ivan and Parker Kelly as your 3rd and 4th line centers? Probably not. I think Kovalenko has showed some spurts at times as a guy who's been up and in and out. Kivi Ranta is another guy. Like, he's just so wildly inconsistent. We saw him have a hat trick in the bubble a couple of years ago for Dallas, and then ever since, he's up and down American League, NHL. He just hasn't found that level of consistency that you need at the National Hockey League level. And the last thing I want to throw in there, the Mikko Rantanen contract situation. We've seen this time and time again. These star player contract situations can affect the locker room. They just can. And right now, we're seeing all these reports around and saying, I want $14 million. If I go to the open market, I can get $14 million. And we know they don't want to give them that. They want to keep it in their internal cap. And so I think that's another thing that is probably weighing this team down a little bit.
I think the term internal cap, I think it's just so dumb because the market's
Me too.
always evolving. So, like, again, if
100%.
you're going to be the Avs and you're going to stare at Rantanen and be like, you can't make more than Nathan McKinnon, that's our internal cap. Rantanen sits there and goes, well, the cap's $10-15 million
Yeah,
higher than it was when he
ridiculous.
signed. Like,
It's
you
ridiculous.
can't do that to me. I think it's just, again, I
Get rid of
laugh
the
every time I
salary
see someone.
cap, luxury tax. Players are not selfish. Owners are selfish. Have a luxury tax. Give the players what they're deserving.
That's how you know you got a former player on the show. But I do agree with you. And you know what? I think a lot of fans agree with you as well. I just really wanted to make that joke. I like that you talked about doing your power rankings on Morning Couple last week because it ties in nicely to our poll question, ties in nicely to our next conversation. Auston Matthews made his return to the lineup for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Leafs had more than just Matthews on the IR. They've been missing a handful of names for quite some time. Knies was missing time. Domi, like a lot of impact pieces out of the lineup. Getting Matthews back, though, is huge. He picks up 2 assists in his return on Saturday night. And I guess my question is, Colby, and it also is the poll question, but like they're 14-7-2. That is with the injuries they've dealt with. That's with, quite honestly, some bad luck that they've dealt with as well. To go on the run that they did without Matthews, to be showing what they're showing right now as we flip the calendar to December, are the Leafs in your top 5 in terms of cup contenders?
They are, just based on what we've seen in the regular season. I like the emergence of Fraser Minton. I think that's a nice add. Look, I think Auston Matthews doesn't get enough credit for his defensive play and what he's able to do in all 3 zones. And look, you can't deny the way Mitch Marner and John Tavares have played. And right now, you're just getting a serious 1-2 punch with those 2 groups. But at the end of the day, you're asking me if they're a real contender. Yes. But to me, they're still number 5 if you're asking me to go 1 through 5. And the reason for that, I've got too much data and I've seen too many playoff series where 16 is invisible and 34 struggling to find his game and their goaltending issues. Now, this year, it seems like they have a 1A punch, right? I'm not going to call him a 1A, 1B because Stolarz has carried the mail and Wall has dealt with his injuries and come back and he's starting to play well, right? And so I think this is the steadiest that they've had in goal. I don't think either goaltender is a superstar. I think they're perfect for each other. Let them split the games. Keep them sharp. Keep them fresh. Don't wear anybody down. And I think this team has more of a chance. I also love Craig Berube and the way he holds these guys accountable. We've seen it time and time again. He's barking at guys on the bench. I saw it the other night when Mitch Marner was out. There was an empty net. They're protecting a lead, right? Marner makes a defensive mistake with the puck, and the buzzer sounds. And instead of celebrating, he's angry at himself. They won the game, but he's angry and he's holding himself accountable for the defensive error. And if that's his thought process, to me in the long term, that bodes well for this team.
Josh is in and says the Leafs are buying into Berube's system. Shane, though, says Leafs, same story, different year. And I think ultimately that's a fair take to have if you're someone who's going to sit there and be like, when they prove it in April, I'll buy into the Toronto Maple Leafs because we've done this song and dance before.
I don't think it's a system thing, Josh. I think it has to do with just a mentality. I think they're buying into Craig Berube's mentality. And like coaches sometimes get annoyed when the media is asking them about their system. It's not systems. It's kind of more structure. They're blueprints, right? But to me, it's mentality that's what they're buying into and accountability that they didn't have with Sheldon Keefe.
Fair. You talked about leaning on those big guns maybe a bit too much. That does tie in nicely to the next player I wanted to talk about. We're going to get to Jason Gregor in 2 minutes to talk some Oilers, but heading out west where Quinn Hughes made some history last night for the Vancouver Canucks. He's now the all-time assist leader in that franchise. He does it by putting up 7 assists in his last 3 games, which is crazy. He's now up to an assist per game on that Canucks blue line. But where I wanted to go with this, and our guy Jeff Patterson discussed this over at Canucks Army, with Filip Hronek out of the lineup, they are starting to lean on Quinn Hughes a ton. His time on ice over the last 3 games, 27-35, 28-31, and then last night it was 31-04 against the Detroit Red Wings as the Canucks won 5-4 in overtime. Quinn Hughes has been off to an amazing start this season. I think he is undoubtedly their MVP, although maybe Kevin Lankinen wants to have a word about that with his early season play. But Colby, you're a defenseman. Should the Canucks be worried they're leaning on Quinn Hughes too much right now?
Well, look, I think obviously 27 to 31 minutes a night for a whole season, not typically super sustainable, but here's why I don't worry about Hughes. Okay. Some guys, you watch them skate, they're digging into the ice a little bit more. They're taking more physical plays. They're playing more physical. You watch Quinn Hughes, and he's an effortless skater. He doesn't have to conserve a ton of energy, right? His ability to he almost floats. He's such a beautiful skater that he looks like he's like an inch off the ice, right? And he's just kind of floating around. It's like he's on a hovercraft. And so I think when you look at those factors and you look at the fact that, look, his career, his average for the year is 24.52 right now. So it's right where it was last year at 24.41. And the previous 2 seasons, he averaged 25, almost 26 minutes a night. So I just think that this is pretty standard for him. And I think the way he plays, I think he's okay to log 26, 27 minutes a night because you just watch him. I bet if you put a heart rate monitor on him, and I'm sure they do, he's one of those guys that's probably like super even keeled. His resting heart rate is probably incredible. His max heart rate is probably better than most people. I mean, the guy is a freakishly high-end athlete, and so it doesn't concern me as much based on the way that he plays.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Like, he is just one of those guys that's a little bit of a freak, man. 28 points in 23 games. He's off to a great start in Vancouver. Let's stay out west, get to today's edition of the All 32 with Jason Gregor. The All 32 is brought to you by Fountain Tire. You and your family's safety is important. Fountain Tire specializes in tire and auto service, and you don't have to settle for a good deal or good customer service because at Fountain Tire, they do both. They treat your vehicle like it's their vehicle. Right now, you can save up to $225 on a set of 4 select tires, including Goodyear, up until December 14th, plus $50 on any service of $150 or more. Some restrictions apply as we bring in Jason Gregor from Oilers Nation, Sports 1440. He's also one half of the DFO Rundown with Frank Saravalli. And Greg's wanted to bring you on to talk about an Oilers team that's suddenly starting to catch fire. We know about their struggles early in the season, but they've now won 3 in a row. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10. So I'll just ask you kind of a basic one to start. What's been fueling this little heater for the Oilers?
Well, actually, if you look at the Oilers' record since their 0-3 start, they're 13-6-2, which is like a 50-win pace season. So they had 3 bad games, and people still think about the 3 bad games. But the big thing is their offense has woken up. Connor McDavid had 21 points in 11 games in November. You know what? You finally got some depth scoring. Podkolzin scored 3 games in a row. You look at Janmark's October. He had him and Brown, your third line guys, each have 6 points, 5-on-5. And that line's crushing the opposition. They're outscoring them. Henrique was 8-2. Brown was 7-2. And the other thing is the Oilers defensemen are tied for the league lead in goals by blue liners with 16. They had 7 in October. They had 9 in in November. Brett Kulak is 1 shy of a career high. Darnell Nurse played great in November. And you know what? They also, in the month of November, they dropped their goals against. They're 12th best in the league. So pretty much every facet of their game has gotten better a bit. And they even got a little bit of a pulse here from their power play. And if their power play gets back up to 25%, where it's probably should be, then they'll be even more dangerous.
Jason, I'm a guy who really believes in building through the back end. It's something that I've been consistently talking about since I entered the media world. I was a defenseman, so sure, I have bias there. And I still think there's holes on this back end. And I do agree Darnell Nurse has played better. I don't think that I don't throw the knives at him as much as a lot of people do. But is there any word around Edmonton about potential defensemen that Stan Bowman is either looking at? Is there any guys who maybe are not playing or signed anywhere that they might have been reaching out to or been in touch with? And what is the plan to improve the blue line just from a personnel standpoint? Or do you feel confident that they can, make a run with this group?
No, I think everybody knows they're going to upgrade their second pair right defense. It's just a matter of when. I probably don't see it until closer to the trade deadline, to be honest. And, we'll see. Like, look at the standings right now. There's lots of teams, I think, who might get themselves convinced that they can, make the playoffs. And in some markets, that'll be it. Now, what happens to Buffalo? Buffalo falls out. Do they look potentially. There's always the Rasmus Andersson, although I think the odds of him ever coming to Edmonton are pretty much zero. You're not gonna have the Calgary Flames ownership trade him there and then watch him maybe potentially hoist a cup in Edmonton. So I don't think Andersson's there. Everybody's name is out there. I've seen Rasmus Ristolainen's name a bit, and I don't know. I'm kind of torn on him. He checks a lot of boxes, and then I'm concerned about his consistency with his decision making. But he doesn't have, like, Darnell Nurse, the way he's playing right now. You just need a solid second pair guy, because Nurse can be the one who carries the pair. He's always been a good productive player 5-on-5 and even strength, and actually even shorthanded. But when he plays within himself, then he's a really good player. And they have their top pair. So I really think they need one guy. Now, I wonder if they even look to add a seventh defenseman in case of injury, because we all know that in the playoffs, to go deep, usually you're going with 7 or 8. And, I don't know. And Troy Stetcher's highly, highly competitive player. I don't know if they want him as their number 7 for sure in case of injury in the playoffs. So I could see them adding, a top 4 guy, but then also maybe adding some size, because Dermott and Stetcher are both pretty small as your number 7.
Can I just follow up and ask you, what would you be willing to give up for a top 4 guy? Because they don't come cheap. They're hard to find. Righties are especially hard to find. Who would you be willing to what I should say, would you be willing to part with?
Well, it all depends how much term he has left, right? Like if you can find someone like Ekholm, not saying Ekholm the player, but Ekholm the term, and you get him for this run and 1 or 2 other runs, and you know what his cap hit is, you know what? I give up a first all day long. I don't even think twice about doing that. Now I know they gave up their first already to get O'Reilly, but you can give up another first. You know what? I'd even look at maybe a guy like Boeke, who just got named to the World Junior team. Like, Edmonton's in win now mode. And if a guy has term, then I'm definitely willing to do more for sure. If it's only a rental, you know what, then you probably can do a second rounder or something like that. And, you'll have to send somebody else to make the money work. But if I'm Edmonton, and I think their team's good, I think their team's quite good, I don't really think they worry about a guy, down the road too often. I think they got to go. And they're all in here the next few trade deadlines. So, you're giving up first rounders. And if that means you're giving up even a Boeke, that, you kind of got to do that.
We got a question here from the chat. D says goals against is not hurting the Oilers. It's the lack of production from, a handful of players call them the support cast around McDavid and Draisaitl in the top 6. Skinner's in that mix. I know Arvidsson and Hyman are banged up right now. Nuge just starting to wake up. So is Podkolzin. But is there anyone in that mix? And maybe this is just me asking a Jeff Skinner question, but is there anyone in that mix where their lack of production actually does concern you a little bit, where you go, hey, maybe it's not just a bad start to the year. Maybe this player's past their prime?
Well, Jeff Skinner, there's 2 things at play here. Jeff Skinner's not a checking forward. So if you don't play him in an offensive situation, he ain't helping your team. Now, he didn't help himself by having too many turnovers and giveaways early in the year when he played in the top 6, and that's hurt him. And I don't know if the coach right now trusts him enough. Although this past weekend, I thought Skinner was quite competitive and seemed to have a little bit more jump in his game. And I saw the coach give him a few more minutes. So, he's a guy like any scorer that he hasn't scored now for a while. And look at Podkolzin. Podkolzin hadn't scored in a year and a half. And all of a sudden he scores once and boom, he scored 3 games in a row. And he's not Jeff Skinner. But like Jeff Skinner, when Hyman, Arvidsson, and Kane come back, and the way Podkolzin's playing, you fit him in your top 9. I don't really see where Jeff Skinner fits on your team at that point, to be honest. I think it's going to be fascinating to see what they do with them. And then, like, even Kapanen, who's come in now, and now he's a right winger, but he's filled the void and, hit a post, and then he scored a goal. Now, obviously, if Hyman plays, I think he'll be back in the top 6. But, the production has changed because Kapanen scored, Podkolzin scored. The guys there are producing. But the big one is Connor McDavid, guys. He had 10 points in his first 10 games. He has 21 and 11 since, right? Like, let's be real here. When your best players are producing, then the lack of offense isn't as noticeable. And that's what's happened here as McDavid's jumped up. He's now 11th in scoring, and they're really producing. You do need depth guys going, but Hyman and Arvidsson, like Arvidsson, tomorrow's going to be game 9. I think he misses, like, for what was supposed to be a short-term injury. It's now 3 weeks, and I haven't even seen that guy on the ice. So I don't know when he's coming back. So they're lucky that Podkolzin's really stepped up and filled the void.
Yeah. Okay, quickly in 30 seconds before I let you go. Next Saturday, the Blues come to Rogers Place. And I mean, hey, 6 months ago, you would have been like, why is that game a big deal? But Broberg and Holloway make their returns. Do you think it's going to be a ruthless reception in Rogers Place for them?
Well, I don't even think Broberg's playing, is he? But
he's back. He returned the other day.
Now? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll be ruthless. Edmonton fans, I don't think are that. Like, how much animosity you have a guy like, hey, buddy, you got given the lottery ticket for Broberg. Of course you're going to take it. You kidding me? Every fan would be like, I can't even be mad at the guy. Shit, I would have taken $9.2 million. So I don't think so. They'll probably get a little cheer maybe early in warm up when they're announced. And then after that, they'll boo them because they're an opposing team. But it's not, I don't think it's going to be that acrimonious. I don't really see why.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. There'll certainly be a lot of eyeballs on that game. Greg's, appreciate you popping on. Thanks for doing this.
Have a good one, fellas.
Daily Faceoff inbox question, hashtag AskDFO. My question for you, Colby, is why did you have a big smirk on as I asked that last question?
Well, I know you'll be yelling and screaming and booing at Rogers Place. That's what I was going to chime in and say, because you're ride or die, and it doesn't matter if you wrong them or they wrong you. They're not Oilers, so they're not your guys.
I don't know. We do have another question here. Yeah, there you go. Colton is in. He wants to know if you think Trevor Zegras to Utah would be a nice boost for Utah. Zegras has been on Frank's trade targets board now for like a year. Like, it's clearly not going to work out there long term with him in Anaheim. But what do you make of Utah as a potential fit, as Colton throws out here?
I think it's actually a pretty good fit. You know, you kind of look at what they have, you look at what they're building, they're looking for excitement, they're looking to sell tickets. I don't think he makes them a playoff team. I just don't. I think they're some time away, but you know, you got Keller, you've got Schmaltz. You know, there are pieces. The problem for me with Utah right now is they're too banged up on the back end, right? Marino's been out, Jersey's been out. Hard to recover when you're missing two solid pro top four type of defensemen in your lineup that eat important minutes. So I do think, though, eventually Zegras goes. He's never going to be a Pat Verbeek style player, and it makes sense that he would be on the trade targets board.
Yeah, that's fair. Our Dominion Lending Center's poll question brought to you by Dominion Lending. Mortgage up for renewal, lock in the best rates and products with Dominion Lending Centers. Visit dominionlending.ca. 73% of our listeners or viewers, Colby, said the Leafs are not in their top 5 for Stanley Cup contenders. That means about 26% said they are.
Can we get some geographical information as to where these votes are coming from? Because I suspect there could be a lot of votes coming from Western Canada. I suspect.
Yeah, there might be. We did get a positive Leafs comment from our guy Joe, who says, with how deep the Leafs are in Berube behind the bench, they are a top 5 for me. I think it is really, really close. The betting odds do have them in the top 5. So the books are with the minority, the 26% of you who voted that, yes, they are in the top 5. So speaking of betting, let's get to our Bet365 segment for the day. Use the promo code NATION when you download the app. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Everything's about the Leafs today. I did a Leafs same game parlay for their game against the Blackhawks tonight. It's the Leafs on the puck line. Sorry, Auston Matthews to score a goal. It should come in right around plus 200 there. So Leafs on the puck line and Auston Matthews to score is my pick tonight for our friends over at Bet365, and that will bring us to garbage time, Colby, and a pretty cool video from the Boston Bruins and their celebration this weekend. Pat, I think we got it. We can give it a run. They got the drone shot flying in. Like, whoever this drone operator is deserves an award. This was wildly creative.
And the cameos are amazing. It starts with Bobby Orr. There's just great. I mean, Johnny Busic's a big part of it. Phil Esposito. I mean, it's just, they did a really nice job with this. And I'll be honest, the Bruins are not known for this type of creativity and this type of marketing because they don't have to. They're the Boston Bruins. But I'll tell you, they knocked this out of the park. I'm not one who normally comments. There's Willie O'Ree. I'm not one who normally comments on jerseys. They wore those special jerseys. There's John Busick, who was in charge of team services when I was with the Bruins. He's an awesome guy. It's great to see him still so involved. But you know, the Bruins came out hot. They had great uniforms on. You could see there was a lot of fire for Charlie McAvoy, Charlie Coyle, Brad Marchand. Pasta wears the bucket in warmups. He gets on the board. Who knows? Maybe a little turning point for the Bruins. I mean, granted, it was against Montreal, but that is a big rivalry. But ultimately, job well done by the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, I like that you pointed out all those cameos. Also, just the coordination to pull off this video the way they did with everyone standing where they were. Wildly impressive stuff from the Bruins. And yeah, they're starting to turn it around a little bit. I know the games played skew things a bit, but like they have 27 points now in 26 games. Again, they're in a playoff spot, not a wild card team. They're in those top 3 spots in the Atlantic right now. So things are looking up for the Bruins. Vibes were high at their centennial celebration. Colby, appreciate you popping on today. Tomorrow, you're going to be on the show with Frank Saravalli as I fly back home. So we'll be live as we are Monday through Friday at noon Eastern. Tomorrow will be Colby and Frank. Shout out to Jason Gregor for popping on and our guy Pat Puff behind the scenes. Enjoy your Monday, hockey fans, and we'll see you back here tomorrow at noon Eastern. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content, from daily live shows with Frank Saravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.